First of all, there are a couple of interesting animations that are largely unused throughout the game. First is an animation called Stand Hit that several units have in the game files. Apparently it was an animation that triggered when the unit was hit by an attack, making them flinch. These are the units I could find that have this animation type, and as you can see, many of them are glitched. Another unused animation is the Stand Victory animation. This animation is used several times in the campaigns for cinematic value, but as far as I can tell, it never had a mechanical purpose. Here are the units who have victory animations. I'm a bit confused at this selection. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason about which models got victory animations and which ones did not. So, starting with odd unit animations, the Rifleman actually has this spell animation. Riflemen don't have any active spells, but it almost looks like a flare ability like the Mortar team has. You could also probably wire it in the world editor to make him fire a grenade or something in an arc, judging by the way he's pointing his boomstick. The Sorceress has a channel spell animation despite not actually having any channel spells, so any spell that required her to maintain concentration on a spell could be flawlessly added to her model in the world editor if you wanted. Speaking of sorceresses, because of the new Blood Elf race, she's wearing red as a secondary color, but if you change your model to the Reign of Chaos version in the world editor, you can change her back to a gray trim instead. The same goes for the Priest and Dragonhawk Rider if you don't like their Blood Elf forms. You may have also noticed that from Reign of Chaos to Frozen Throne, most of the siege units had a change in their model as well. I always wondered why this significant yet quiet change was made, and it turns out it was to avoid litigation with companies like Wizards of the Coast and Warhammer Fantasy. Owlbear's names were changed to Wildkins, the boots of Elvenkind were changed to the boots of Quel'Thalas, steam tanks were changed to siege engines, and gyrocopters were changed back to their Warcraft 2 name of flying machines. They even had to change ballistas to glaive throwers, though I personally don't understand how you can copyright a war machine invented in 400 BC. From there, Blizzard probably thought it was just as well they may as well update the catapult into a demolisher. Before the steam tank was even called a steam tank, early tooltip and model data indicates that it was called a war wagon. Back then, rather than being basically an armored cannon, it was instead an armored transport that riflemen could garrison inside and fire out of. Essentially a moving burrow. That would have been pretty awesome, but for some reason, probably complexity, they changed it to the artillery vehicle we know of now. Spellbreakers were originally called spell thieves, and as their animation set indicates, they used to have a magic defense ability, where they could raise their shield much like a footman and become immune to spells while moving more slowly. Eventually they were changed to be passively immune to magic all the time, but the ability is still found in the world editor, and giving a Spellbreaker unit the defend ability will work as far as their animation goes. The Dragonhawk Riders, originally called Dragonhawks in Reign of Chaos, have identical models besides their red color and a new channel animation for their new spells, but they have different portraits. Paladins. Now here's something of interest. If you've zoomed in during a game, you may have noticed that Paladins' books have the word Sam in them. This is almost certainly a nod to Samwise Didier, who is the senior art director of the game. However, there are several Paladin variant models in the game with variant books to match. The black-haired Paladin's book is unchanged, but the white-haired Paladin says Ozzy in it. Samwise loves metal, as you can tell by his cover of Power of the Horde, and thus put this in as a tribute to Ozzy Osbourne.
Uther's book also has a reference to metal, showing the logo for the Swedish band Hammerfall.
Arthas's says Matt O. Rue W in it, a token of Blizzard artists Matt Orsburn and Rue Weerasurya. Another interesting secret is that when Arthas gets Frostmourne, his model now holds his book upside down when casting, a chilling foreshadowing of his turning his back on the light if ever there was one. The Paladins have an unused channel animation as well, and they have different armor styles besides their beard colors if you notice. Dalen Proudmoore is loosely based on the Paladin model, though his spellcasting is a bit different, but I was really disappointed that his cape doesn't show the actual Kul'Tiras crest on it. That would have been a great Easter egg for those who've looked at the Warcraft 2 manual. I knew fairly early on that Sylvanas was based on Chandra's Feathermoon's model, or vice versa, but I didn't realize that both of them have nearly the exact same animations as the Elven Archer unit. The Dark Ranger, previously called a Banshee Ranger, has only one difference. The spell animation looks more suited to channeling for life drain. Also, Chandra shoots two of her arrows backwards in her victory animation. Most likely an intentional animation, as Sylvanas's are completely normal.
Water elementals have a weird quirk with their vertex coloring. Any modifications to the red value only affect their bracers. It's the only unit in the game that does this, and I have no idea why.
The riderless horse unit has the exact same animations as the knight unit, and the pack horse is almost the same, except it seems to hang its head a bit more. Poor little beast of burden. The Phoenix has a death animation, which is interesting. Normally, it only dies if you destroy it in egg form, but this allows you to make a Phoenix without the egg ability and it'll still work okay. As I mentioned in one of the addendum videos, this Blood Elf wagon has this counterpart called Illidan wagon that you can put in your maps by typing this as the model used. I never realized this until now, but bandits are based completely on the Footman model, complete with a defend animation option available to them. No natural bandit creeps have defend, but you could program it into a custom map flawlessly. Looking at the ship units in the game, it turns out that frigates used to be called destroyers to match their name in Warcraft 2. I was a bit disappointed they stuck with frigates. Also, the battleships of both the Night Elves and the Alliance have birth animations for an unknown reason, though this could make for a pretty funny cutscene. So, onto the buildings. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but buildings all have foundations under the ground in order to make them look better when built on slopes. Rarely are any slopes that steep in campaigns or melee maps, but here are a few of the more interesting foundations if you're curious.
If you look closely, you can see that the Griffin Aviary has an egg inside it.
As indicated in the game, the High Elven Barracks building was once called a Mage Tower, and it was apparently the original building for training priests and sorceresses, later replaced by the Arcane Sanctum. Having a Mage Tower would have matched it closer to Warcraft 2, so I'm a bit disappointed in their final decision. But the High Elf Barracks still doesn't look as cool as the Mage Towers in Warcraft 2 did, so oh well. Also, the Emissary unit, this human-looking priest, has the internal name of Human Mage, indicating that it may have been a replacement for the Sorceress or Priest model in an earlier version. The Grain Warehouse building is only seen once in the human campaign, but it has a construction animation where it slowly inflates like a bouncy house. And finally, this odd unit is in the human files on the world editor and is called Icy Treasure Box. It's just as durable as a magic vault, but it's not Treasure Box at all, it's a Frostmourne pedestal. It has this breaking ice animation when killed, but despite its tooltip saying, "A treasure lies frozen within," making it drop an item is kinda clunky. As far as I know, it's never used in any campaign. I can't help but wonder if peons were the first models created in the game, because their animations are uniquely named. Instead of stand 1, stand 2, etc. like every other model in the game, their stand animations are named things like itch head, stretch, and talk gesture. This never would have held up for the countless other models in the game, so this system seems to have been scrapped immediately. Also, I find it a bit odd that the head of the pickaxe matches the peon's skin color. And this Attack 2 animation is hilarious, I never noticed it before, getting his pickaxe stuck in the enemy like that. Grunts have a cool spell animation. Judging by some old data in the beta, this ability was likely called Blood Rage, and it goes well with Frenzy or other abilities built into the game. Kodo Beasts used to be called Koto Beasts, judging by some sound and model names in the game data. Also, they, along with some other random models, have different walk speeds for some reason, as if they're once differentiated between walking and sprinting. Judging by the way some of the animations are named Channel, the drum's ability wasn't always passive. You used to be able to turn it on and off, possibly draining mana as long as you were boosting allies' attack. Besides the rider-specific animations, the riderless Kodo Beast is for the most part the same, but for some reason it doesn't have a barf animation. If you've read the Warcraft 3 manual or information on the online wiki, you'll know this already, but the symbol on the Blade Master's flag is that of the Burning Blade clan. Grom Hellscreams is the Warsong clan's flag, and Jubathos of the Blackrock clan, sure enough, has the same Blackrock clan flag, all from Warcraft 2. Man, I love those flags as a kid. I miss the focus on clans and alliances, and I wish the Night Elves and Scourge had different denominations too. Going back to catapults, if my Warcraft 3 game box is any indicator, peons used to push the catapults into battle in the beta. I always thought it'd be cool if more games did this instead of making the catapults seemingly sentient, but it probably overcomplicated their movement animation and whatnot. Gold mines look different too, and look at this blue necropolis. Some beta screenshots confirm these all look different. Wind Riders used to be called Wyvern Riders, and they have an unused spell animation where it looks like the Wyvern tries to sting a target. I learned when looking at some custom maps in the Reign of Chaos days that Serpent Ward was originally an existing model before the expansion, but went unused. Back then it was called Ancestral Spirit or Ancestral Guardian, and was the ward that Witch Doctors had instead of Healing Ward. Also, the Shadow Hunter hero that uses them now was actually one of the early heroes in the beta version of the game, but he was apparently put on reserve for the expansion. Also, he used to have a mask over his face like this. They apparently wanted his face to be more visible as a hero, but I'm not entirely sure why. They sure didn't seem to care about giving Priestesses of the Moon an identity. Their icon and hero model puts so much emphasis on the white tiger I never really knew what to imagine Tyrande is looking like. Speaking of wards, did you know there's a monster lure ward in the game's files? It looks like this, and I've used it a couple times as a mana ward to sidekick the healing ward in maps that I've made. The game's files say it's supposed to lure monsters to it, but it has no effect, so it must have been scrapped at some point in the process. I'm not sure what the point of luring monsters would have been anyway. Maybe it was to lure creeps and make creeping easier with towers or something? Anyway, its unique model is at your disposal in the world editor at any rate. The Chaos Warlord character was apparently playable at some point, given his sound set.
The ground shall run red with blood!
And he was called an Orc Warlord in the beta. In the current file, his name is Mathog, but in the campaign he's only known as Slave Master. It's interesting that he seems to be the only orc who rides a horse instead of a wolf. I thought that maybe given his station as Slave Master, maybe he stole it from Strongbrad, but older screenshots show him riding it. And look at that horse. That horse is clearly evil. Orc Warlock's spell animation is called Call Storm, and sure enough, there's an old beta or alpha level spell called Call Storm. There's an icon for it, but it's unknown what it did. It's also interesting to me that Warlocks had shaman spells. Perhaps this was an early model for shamans or something, because what looks like shamans in the past were actually called Spirit Walkers. Now, Spirit Wolves have an animation for doing critical strike, but they also have another spell animation that shows them howling. Perhaps at one point they had a roar ability instead of invisibility, but the consensus among summoned units in the game now shows that Blizzard tended to prefer them to have autocast or passive abilities for less micromanagement. The Timber and Direwolf models have similar animations as well, except for lack of special effects associated with them. And they also have a birth animation, suggesting that the Spirit Wolf model was created first and these followed suit. Some evidence suggests that the War Mill model used to be more lumber mill-like and that it was not originally a lumber mill/blacksmith combo, but two separate buildings just like the humans have and matching the situation in Warcraft 2. Lastly, there's a completely unused secret unit for the orcs, the Berserker. I think it actually would be kinda cool were it not for the stupid clown hair, but you can put it in your map if you want using this path as the model type for a custom unit. Once when I was making a Warcraft 1 remake in Warcraft 3, I tried to make a slime creep and found out something really strange. The Acolyte uses the same skin as sludge minions, and I have no idea why. It could be an example of artist laziness, but why this combination of units? I also can't see where their markings match up. I'm no skinner, so I don't know, but that's definitely a weird built-in mechanic for sure. The too famous, Murloc units started off as a variation of the Ghoul model. You can see how similar they are in terms of movement and animation, although they're not quite the same. If you've made maps before or looked closely in games with undead in them, you'll notice that abominations have a special animation when they die to siege damage. I originally thought this was because they were just enormous sacks of blood and would look weird with less due to an explosion, but it's actually because of an ability abominations used to have in place of Disease Cloud. I'll talk more about this in the next video, but has this icon ever baffled you? What is going on here? What does this have to do with a cloud of disease? Well, originally the icon looked like this. It was an upgrade for abominations to explode and deal damage when they died, rather than simply leaving behind a plague cloud. And get this, in the original ability set of abominations, you wouldn't train them from a slaughterhouse. You would have to merge 3 ghouls together to make one. How cool and disgusting is that? Like a 3-way Archon made by 3 Templars.
The merging is complete!
The Banshee unit has a spell animation, but it's called Wail. I'm not sure if this was originally an ability it had or a remnant of a different animation naming system. Necromancers have a channel animation, but no channeling spells, interestingly. Also, Frostworms have a birth animation, meaning that they may have once been summonable instead of trainable from buildings. I never noticed this before, but look at the carrion beetles. They only have 4 legs! I don't know why that's so disgusting to me, but they suddenly look like little creepy pack dogs or something entirely non-insectoid. Also, carrion beetles used to be called scarabs in an earlier draft of the game. There's a somewhat strange hidden file for a burning archer skeleton unit. It was essentially a skeleton archer, but had a bow with a blazing bowstring and skull. It may have been taken out primarily because it looked just a bit too busy. The Crypt Lord is a very interesting model. He has an alternate form of animation while he's casting Locust Swarm, in which he's beating his wings, though I may be one of the few people to have not noticed that already. Also, he has an interesting morph animation called Defend. At first I thought it was for a burrow ability like that of the Crypt Fiend, but judging by the way his spikes pop out and how he doesn't go all the way underground, it was probably an ability more like that of the Gargoyle's stone form. He could dig underground and heal while possibly gaining more armor and a spiked barricades-like passive ability in the meantime. He also has a channel animation despite any channeling spells, and he also has this awkward throw animation in which his nose extends disturbingly long. It looks like it could have been used with the Impale ability, but it's completely unused in the game. Also, there used to be a prerequisite building for building gargoyles called a gargoyle spire. All it did was allow gargoyles to be produced by the crypt in research stone form, so it was easily merged in with the graveyard. The shrine/Gul'dan's skull thingy has a construction animation, interestingly, making it a possibility for a custom building added to a homebrew technology tree, possibly as a flamethrower tower or something. And lastly, for the undead, whereas the human and goblin shipyards have no birth animation, the undead shipyard and night elf shipyard do, even though they're never buildable in the campaigns. Their animations are pretty clumsy, and honestly they're probably just added because of the unique way that night elf and undead buildings come into being instead of being assembled piece by piece. But they do work for making a custom game in which building shipyards is an option. Beta files indicate that there was originally a pixie unit for the Night Elves, though this may have just been the original name for wisps. Also, wisps could apparently be added in some way to ancients. I'm guessing like a garrison inside them for protection or for buffing the ancient strength. The treants were originally called ents in the game's files, but likely were changed to avoid copyright issues. Okay, so I can understand the developers cutting corners for the sake of simpler skinning, but in doing so with the Dryad unit, if you look close, her chest texture's looped to her back. That's right, she does in fact have 4 boobs. The Mountain Giants model is kinda unique in that depending on what type of tree it picks up, the texture matches its club, even if you grab a blighted tree or a mushroom from Outland. The Priestess of the Moon, originally called Moon Priestess, originally rode on a giant flying owl instead of a tiger, possibly making it the only flying hero originally. Speaking of owls, for some reason the snowy owl's death animation's screwy. I'm guessing this is because it's based off the Scout abilities owl model, but even it at least shrinks a bit before it disappears. What the heck is this? This is a minor thing, but the Avatar of Vengeance was originally called a Spirit of Vengeance, and the Spirits of Vengeance were called Avenging Watchers. This makes sense with Maiev and her team called the Watchers, and her focus on vengeance. The Watcher models found in the underground Night Elf level are interesting. These sentries used to be called Watchers, and the Runner model is only slightly modified from this model. It still has an attack animation where it tries to attack with the scroll in its hand, funnily enough. Also, I know that Maiev and the Warden heroes on Frozen Throne are based on this Reign of Chaos Warden model, but I never noticed that it actually had a special animation for Blink, even in Reign of Chaos. Apparently this ability was under consideration even back then, but it was never implemented until the expansion when this hero class could be elaborated upon. There's another secret unit called a Night Elf fishing ship. I'm not sure if it was reserved for the first Frozen Throne Night Elf level or not, but it's different from the Night Elf transport model. Remember the Barrow Den building? The one where Furion is sleeping in the campaign? This used to be called a Bear Den, suggesting it was once part of the Night Elf technology tree and a prerequisite for training Druids of the Claw. It even has a functioning and pretty cool looking research or training animation. The Demon Hunter model has a throw animation, which I'm not entirely sure what it's for. Possibly some kind of fan of knives attack? There's also this channel animation, strangely. The only time it's used is when Illidan is closing the Dimension Gates and Gates of the Abyss, but the vanilla Demon Hunter has it too. So an earlier draft of the hero apparently had a concentration spell. The only difference with Demon Illidan's model is some water walking animations. I never noticed that Furion's look changes from the Reign of Chaos to the Frozen Throne. Instead of wearing a cloak of leaves, he wears a cloak of fur and what appears to be feathers. Also, did you never notice he dies Jedi style? But not when he's riding a stag for some reason. I still wonder why his hair changed color after Warcraft 3. The Forest and Dark Trolls have a Berserk spell animation, just like the Orc unit does, but for some reason the Ice Troll model doesn't. Interestingly, Dragon Whelps have a Devour animation, even though they generally don't have this ability. They don't have any abilities at all, in fact, so this could be a carryover from a previous idea for their ability set. Also, Blue Dragons are called Azure Dragons in the game's data. Heroes 3, anyone? Spiders have 2 walk speeds, fast and slow, as do Magnetars and Dragonspawn. Another unit that has 2 walking speeds is the Mammoth, and it has a spell animation even though none of its creep forms has any spells. Open for interpretation. Infernal Contraptions and Juggernauts are slightly different in their models, as you can see here. I originally thought they were just different sizes of the same creep. Originally, they were called Infernal Cannons. Now that I look at them closer, it looks like there are two ability forms of the same unit. Maybe some kind of Warcraft version of a siege tank with two modes? I didn't know this before, but Tuskars are based on the Ogre models and have the same animations. There are only two units in the game that have sleep animations: Ogres, and by extension Tuskars, and Golems. I thought it would have been fun to have more creeps have this animation. It was always kind of distracting to have most of the creeps standing up in their sleep. And technically, golems don't sleep anyway. This animation was just for their surprise attacks and cinematics. Makruras were once called lobstroks, and succubi were once called demonesses. Space fel orcs and marines are surprisingly detailed and have intricate attack animations, but otherwise they're just modified rifleman models. And zerglings are just slightly modified felhounds. The hydralisk's dying animation always looks weird to me. I'm used to them exploding from space pressure. And the only secret I can find in the Naga race is that Coatls used to be called wind serpents. That's actually the original name for dragonhawks as well. Blizzard tried twice to make something called a wind serpent, but I guess it wasn't meant to be. The Goblin Shredder may have once been called an Iron Golem, though this seems a bit unlikely. Maybe they started working on an actual Iron Golem and then ended up saving the model differently.
Also, the Pocket Factory has an interesting gear effect if you look at it the right way. From this angle, it looks like that gear is spinning continuously, but if you look behind it, you'll see it's actually an illusion. This was probably done to save space with fewer vertices on the 3D model. And lastly for the Goblins, the Goblin Merchant has this amusing work animation. It goes unused because the Merchant is a neutral building that doesn't train or research anything over time, which I think is a shame because clearly quite a bit of work went into the animation.
And critters. Rats and dogs seem to be at least partially based on the wolf model, though their cast animations are very different. The stag is based on the dryad model, and its file is curiously called Black Stag Male. The vulture and albatross are probably based on the druid of the Talon or something, and have a weird diving animation for attack. The hermit crab's attack animation is just laughable. Dink! Villagers have a stand flesh animation that was used exclusively for the cinematic where they're burning the bodies in Stratholme. I wonder if anyone has ever wired that animation to an actual spell. The tents have the crest of the nation of Gilneas on them for an unknown reason. Maybe Gilneas is the main manufacturer of tents Azeroth-wide. Also, I didn't realize this earlier, but there was an earlier model of a steam tank in the beta that had a wrecking ball on it. Apparently it damaged buildings in a different way in that draft of the model. And lastly, there are two weird models based on Blizzard's art director Samwise Didier, a flaming cube and a shoveler based on the Kobold model. Neither is normally accessible in the game's files, and I may not have ever known they existed, except they're used as end credits portraits in the campaign. As far as doodads go, there are some that have weird, unused animations, but I'm guessing that was just because they're edited versions of existing units like buildings. There are a couple that are really weird, like the minecart, which has a wounded animation and a spell fix animation, neither of which are very different from the original stand one. I also noticed that the statue of Ajara found in the Tomb of Sargeras scenario has a death animation in which Ajara grows a tail. I'm not sure how this was originally supposed to work, since in the scenario Maiev finds a statue like this already. The statue is by default part of the dungeon tile set, not the Sunken Ruins one, which is interesting. Perhaps the original Tomb of Sargeras was going to be more red and demonic in appearance. You may have noticed this sign in some villages on the game, Tracy's Armory. This is almost certainly a reference to the Blizzard employee Tracy W. Bush, who did a lot of the music for the game. He's also the voice acting for this famous sound.
I'm not sure who Bob's Guns is named after, but both of these stores are also found on StarCraft 1.
As far as item models go, there's a secret item model of a wrapped present you'll recognize if you've played the scenario Azeroth Grand Prix. There are also 4 models set aside that are flags for each of the races, apparently set up for a capture the flag mechanic.